I never imagined the worst day of my life would start with a simple phone call. It was late afternoon, and the golden light was slipping through the curtains, casting long shadows across the small living room where I sat. The air felt heavy, thick with a quiet anticipation that I couldn't explain. At 19, 7 months pregnant, my entire world was supposed to be full of hope and new beginnings. But the moment his voice cracked through the line, everything shifted. "I can't do this anymore," he said, each word sinking into me like a cold blade. The silence that followed was deafening, an endless void stretching between us. It swallowed the room, filled every corner with a suffocating fog. I remember clutching the phone tighter, my heart pounding so loudly I was afraid he'd hear it on the other end. The walls seemed to close in, muffling the muffled sounds of traffic passing outside, the hum of distant voices, turning the world into an echo chamber of my despair. The light dimmed, shadows grew deeper, and I was rooted to that spot, frozen in a nightmare I couldn't wake from. That was the moment I realized I was about to face the biggest challenge of my life alone. The man, my boyfriend, the father of my child, who I believed would stand by me through everything, vanished. Not with a fight, not with a word of comfort or explanation, just abandonment. The line went dead, leaving me staring at the lifeless voice box like it held the answer to a question I was too scared to ask. How could he just walk away when I needed him the most? The ground beneath me felt like it cracked and gave way, like the room itself had betrayed me. I was left with nothing but the growing life inside me and a terrifying, unknown future looming like a dark storm cloud. Every sound around me, the creaking floorboards, the distant bark of a dog, the soft rustle of leaves outside, was suddenly foreign, charged with a new, ominous weight. I sank to the floor, tears burning my eyes but refusing to fall. My breath hitched in my chest, a wild, panicked rhythm that echoed the chaos inside. The nursery I had started to prepare in the corner of my tiny apartment now felt like a cruel joke. Empty crib sheets fluttering in the faint breeze from an open window, shadows twisting against the pastel walls. I didn't know then that this moment would define me. The girl who had dreamed of a future with him, of family and love, was gone. What remained was someone who would have to find strength she never knew she had, in a world that suddenly seemed cold and unforgiving. I was terrified, utterly alone, and completely unprepared for the road that stretched ahead, a road thicker with shadows than light, demanding every ounce of courage I could summon. The city's noise outside felt distant, irrelevant, as I sat there clutching my belly, waiting for the next breath to steady me for whatever was to come. Looking back now, I can see how the cracks in our relationship slowly deepened until that breaking point. We met when I was barely out of high school, just a girl with dreams bigger than the small town I grew up in. I was young, hopeful, and painfully naive, trusting that love was enough to heal any wound. At first, he was my rock. Daniel, the man who made me laugh when the world felt heavy, whose touch was gentle enough to calm my restless heart. He was funny and caring, the kind of person who wrapped you in a sense of safety, like a warm blanket on a cold night. We spent hours talking about our future, whispering plans about the family we would build together. I imagined a house filled with laughter, the patter of little feet running through sunlit rooms. I pictured myself holding our child, our love finally complete. But as the months slipped by, the man I thought I knew began to change in ways I couldn't understand. Small arguments grew into sharp, sudden explosions, words thrown like knives. There were nights when he'd disappear for hours without a phone call, leaving me with nothing but the ticking clock and my growing unease. The apartment, once a place of shared dreams, started to feel colder, shadows lengthening even in the daylight. His absence turned into a constant presence, an invisible weight pressing down on me, tightening with each passing day. Still, I held on to hope like it was the last light in a dark tunnel. I told myself, once the baby arrived, things would be different, that the innocence of a child would heal the cracks between us. But deep down, a whisper of doubt gnawed at my heart, though I refused to listen. When Lucas was born, pure and perfect, he became everything I needed. His tiny hands curled around my finger, his soft cries a reminder that I had a new reason to fight. The long nights when sleep was a stranger were softened by his presence, his warmth a shield against the loneliness that threatened to swallow me whole. But the absence of his father was like a shadow over us, dark and relentless, stretching across every moment. Raising Lucas alone was nothing like I had imagined. It was harder, lonelier, and terrifying in ways I never anticipated. But he taught me what true love is: fierce, unyielding, and unconditional. His smile could break through the darkest cloud, his laughter a balm for my weary soul. Yet, even in my strongest moments, I found myself wondering what life might have been if Daniel had stayed. Would Lucas have two arms to hold him through the storms? Would I have been spared the nights filled with silent tears? The loneliness was suffocating, an invisible wall pressing in from all sides, threatening to crush me under its weight. But giving up was never an option. For Lucas, I had to be strong. I learned to face the silence that screamed through the empty nights, to fill the void left behind. Every sleepless hour, every tired morning, was a battle fought in the name of love. And though the ache of missing Daniel never fully left me, I found within myself a resilience I never knew I had. The hardest part wasn't just the loneliness, the crushing silence that settled in my apartment when Lucas finally fell asleep, leaving me alone with nothing but my thoughts. No, it was the weight of the world bearing down on me every time someone found out I was a single mother. I could feel the whispers, like cold drafts brushing over my skin in the grocery store aisles, or the sharp glances from neighbors when I walked by with Lucas in my arms. Each look felt like an accusation, as if I was some kind of failure, a woman who'd been abandoned and left to flounder. The judgment clung to me like a second skin, suffocating and relentless, more painful than the sleepless nights or the ache in my belly where my child stirred. The constant battle to provide for Lucas without Daniel was a never-ending grind. I worked long hours at jobs that drained every ounce of energy from my body. Early mornings bled into late nights, and too often I found myself rushing home to a quiet apartment, missing those small, precious moments when Lucas would reach out to me with his wide, innocent eyes. I was exhausted, both physically and emotionally. Each day felt like walking a tightrope stretched thin across a bottomless abyss, the fear of falling never far from my mind. Somehow, I forced myself to keep going, fueled only by a fragile thread of hope that maybe, just maybe, things would get better. There were nights when I curled up on the edge of Lucas's crib, the house dark except for the soft glow of the street lamp outside, casting eerie shadows through the curtains. I would let the tears fall freely, the weight of despair pressing down until it felt like I was drowning in my own sadness. I questioned everything. Did I do something wrong? Was I not patient enough? Strong enough? Had I been a better girlfriend? A better person? Could I have changed the course of our story? The doubts spiraled in my mind, drowning out every hopeful thought and leaving behind only the bitter sting of regret. Sometimes, anger consumed me. Fierce, blinding anger at Daniel for leaving, at the world for its cruelty, at myself for feeling so powerless. I wanted to scream, to shake the universe into understanding the pain I carried every single day. But the weight of that anger was heavy, and I buried it deep beneath layers of exhaustion and responsibility, hiding it from Lucas's innocent eyes. Then, in the darkest moments, Lucas would smile at me, or call me Mom in that sweet, unfiltered way only a child can. And suddenly, every tear, every sleepless night, every ache in my heart felt worth it. His tiny hands gripping mine, his trusting gaze, they were my lifeline, my reason to keep fighting. But beneath the love and the fragile peace, the questions lurked, relentless and haunting. Why did he leave? Was there some secret I never knew? Was there another reason beyond the one he said on that phone call? Did he even think about us? Most painfully, was there any chance he would ever come back? I began to brace myself for a lifetime filled with no answers, no reconciliation, no shared family. But somewhere deep inside, a tiny, impossible part of me held onto an ember of hope, faint and flickering like a candle struggling against the wind. And that hope, fragile as it was, kept me moving forward, even when the night seemed darkest. Years later, when Lucas was 10, a letter arrived that shattered the fragile peace I had built around myself. I still remember the moment I held it in my hands, the uneven edges of the envelope, the faded handwriting that stirred a storm inside me. It was from Daniel, the man who had vanished from our lives so many years ago. The words inside were hesitant, soaked with regret and unease. He told me he'd been living in another city all this time, alone, struggling against his own demons, but alive. Alive, yet distant, as if the years away hadn't bridged the chasm he had left behind. His letter was an apology wrapped in sorrow, admitting he was immature and afraid back then, unable to face the responsibilities he had vowed to uphold. He spoke of mistakes, of realizing too late what he had lost, and of a hope to reconnect, to be part of our lives again. Reading those words, my hands trembled, part disbelief, part a desperate longing for a family once shattered. The invitation to forgive wasn't just difficult. It felt like standing at the edge of a dark abyss, staring into a void that could swallow me whole. Could I trust him after all this time? Could I open the door to a man whose silence for a decade had been a wound that never healed? The idea of allowing our fragmented family to become whole again was both terrifying and tantalizing. For Lucas, it was a dream he never voiced outright but carried in his quiet moments, the wish for a father who might finally come home. And for me, it became a test of mercy, of strength, and the impossible question of how much healing was still possible after years steeped in pain and abandonment. The day I met Daniel again was surreal. The boy who walked away was gone, replaced by a man whose uncertain eyes betrayed a heavy burden of regret. The air between us was thick with unspoken words and memories that clung to every corner of the room, like dust settling over a forgotten past. His face, once familiar, now seemed both foreign and haunted, as if carrying ghosts I couldn't see. Seeing him there, I was overwhelmed by a flood of emotions, anger, hope, sorrow, and confusion, tangled together in a storm that threatened to break me. The very presence of Daniel challenged everything I had built, my sense of safety, my hard-won independence, the delicate rhythm Lucas and I had learned to live by. I stood at a crossroads, forced to decide whether this was a chance for rebuilding what had been lost, or a risk that might unravel the life I fought so fiercely to protect. Could I trust him enough to let him into our fragile world, or would opening that door bring darkness where light now struggled to shine? The weight of the decision pressed down on me like a suffocating fog, thick with uncertainty, and the echoes of a past I wasn't sure I was ready to face again. In the end, I chose to open the door, cautiously, slowly, but with an open heart that was both hopeful and wary. The weight of years, the scars carved deep into my soul from Daniel's abandonment, had not faded. But for Lucas's sake, I needed to believe in the possibility that people, even those who hurt you the most, can change. The house was cold the day he returned, the air thick with tension so dense you could almost taste it, bitter and metallic at the back of my throat. Each creak of the floorboard felt loud. Every shadow in the dim light seemed to flicker with hesitation, mirroring the uncertainty between us. It wasn't easy. Opening the door wasn't simply turning a key. It was unlocking years of pain, betrayal, and quiet fear that had hardened around my heart like thick ice. There were tears, mine and Lucas's, flooding the spaces between us when memories spilled too freely, when frustrations boiled over, or when Daniel's presence stirred ghosts of the past too raw to face. There were setbacks, moments when I wanted nothing more than to slam that door shut and bury us all in the silence that had kept me safe for so long. Yet, through the fragility of these moments, something began to change. Layer by layer, Lucas's innocent warmth chipped away at the walls we'd built. His eyes lit up at the faintest signs of their father's affection, reflecting a child's desperate hope for connection. And in those moments, I saw not just the man who left, but the man trying, fumbling through regret and fear, to reclaim some part of what he had lost. Now, standing here at 55, I see how that day, when I was abandoned at 19, shaped every inch of my life. It was the dark thread woven through my story, but it did not define me. Instead, it made me stronger, more fiercely protective of my son, more compassionate toward the broken parts of myself and others. It taught me that family isn't bound solely by blood, but by love, forgiveness, and the difficult courage to keep moving forward when everything feels fractured beyond repair. Life has a way of testing us, of pushing us to edges we never imagined facing alone. But if you're watching this now, feeling abandoned, overwhelmed, or lost in your own darkness, know this: you are stronger than you think. Your pain may feel like the end of your story, but it is only the beginning of your strength. Life will test you, yes, but it will never defeat you. Not as long as you keep reaching for the light, even when the night seems endless. That is the truth I hold close to my heart. The truth I learned raising Lucas alone, and what I now carry as I continue walking forward. Not just surviving, but living, healing, and hoping.